and welcome to What Now with Anna and Eric. I am Anna.
I am Eric.
And we are reading through the Bible chronologically in a year. It's been very enlightening, uplifting, interesting, all of the things ending with the word. There's the three letters ing. Any of those? What's your three-word summary, Eric, of this week?
So my three-word summary, it's really two themes that came out. One kind of in the middle and one near the end. Wisdom, not cheating. That's my three-word. Yeah. Trust me, it'll explain itself as we go through. Wisdom.
Like, what? Is there a comma in there?
Wisdom, not cheating.
Or a hyphen, maybe? All right, mine
wisdom
was
over cheating?
Yes.
Wisdom, don't cheat?
Yes to wisdom is mine.
There you go. Yes to wisdom.
We got a theme. We're rolling with it.
Solomon. He kind of pushed that wisdom thing on us.
Pretty much when you talk about Solomon, wisdom is in there somewhere. So That's good. But yeah, as far as like what we hit on, this was basically Solomon was this whole chunk. Solomon from the beginning. Well, we're still in Solomon even at the end of this. At the end of this week's reading.
We're still in it.
Yeah. So we hit a little bit in First Kings, a little bit in Second Chronicles. We even got some Psalms in there, and we got some Proverbs in there. Yes. So we hit in multiple areas. I was also really looking at, so what you'll notice is First, Second Samuel, First and Second Kings, and First and Second Chronicles overlap in multiple instances. So, and that really has to do with all of the kings or the monarchy.
Yeah.
We also got some judge stuff happening in there with Samuel. But we are getting through Solomon, and Solomon was talked about in First Kings, talked about in Second Chronicles, and he wrote some Psalms, and the Proverbs are his as well. So we got. Can I
tell you that once again, there's a point where you want to get out of a certain book, and I'm ready to move on from Kings and Chronicles at this point. I've hit the. We've been sitting in Kings and Chronicles for a little while now. I always hit that.
Still going to be a while before we get out of them.
Well, I think
we have a lot of Kings left.
Now, I have, not to toot my own horn, but I've ran a couple marathons. Yeah, it's a thing. But that's what I think. It's that wall you hit, like mile 16, 17, 18, where you're like, okay, I'm pretty much good with running now. I'm done with this. But you have to finish through. That's what I get to at these, when we're in these chunks for a little bit longer. I'm like, all right. But hey, there's good stuff to come, I'm sure. So I'm not too worried about it.
So you're like in a Bible marathon, which is nice.
Well, we are really in a Bible marathon. I mean, that's a year-long trip through the Bible, So it happens.
I did, I was looking at basically the differences between Samuel, Kings, Chronicles, just because I was kind of curious as we were going through them. And different sources that I read said that Samuel and Kings, spoiler alert, by the way, Samuel and Kings were written to Israel while they were in exile. And Chronicles was written to Israel when they got out of exile, or at the end of exile, when they were coming back to Israel, basically, is what it was. So you would notice when you're reading the two separate sections that they read a little bit differently. Interestingly enough, also, so the way in the Christian Bible, Samuel, Kings, and Chronicles are all right next to each other. But if you look at the Hebrew Bible, Chronicles is at the end of the Old Testament. Well, okay, the Hebrew Bible only has the Old Testament, but the Chronicles is at the very end, where in the Christian Bible, Malachi is the last one. So just interesting facts to go with.
Look at you bringing fun facts.
Fun facts, yeah, it's very exciting.
I love it.
But we got into some interesting things. We got into Proverbs, which is my favorite Old Testament book, is Proverbs by far.
Yeah.
And really just Solomon. I've always been very interested in Solomon's character, because he was like the wisest guy. And I'm just like, well, yeah, I definitely want to be a wise person. So I've really kind of looked into his life and kind of tried to study what was going on. And one of the big things that always sticks out to me is that Solomon it says he was the wisest man, God said he would make him the wisest man ever. And Solomon still messed up. He made some bad choices throughout his life.
And smartest person ever. Smartest.
Yeah, and it did not go well for him.
Well, and this is what I thought was hilarious. Not funny, haha, just funny, like ironic, like just in that situation. Like in First Kings, I was reading it, and it's funny because Solomon asked for wisdom. He's the wisest guy out there. And like they talk about like how much money and how much stuff he has. And I'm like, God's just setting him up for failure. Like it's just setting him up to screw up. Like even with all of that wisdom, he just gets, God's like, yeah, I'll give you wisdom and I'm going to give you all these riches and all this other stuff. Good luck figuring this out. And of course he screws up. Like he's got all that stuff and all that temptation. And yep, just sorry. But I just thought it was.
And you do kind of see some of those bad choices, even in this part where you don't really get the ramifications until later. Spoiler alert again. When his son comes into power, Israel tells his son, hey, your dad basically bled us dry with taxes. Please lower them. The son does not listen to good advice, and he gets ousted. But like we can kind of see, like even with all of these riches and wealth, like even what we read this week, it says Solomon just went around and he just started building whatever he wanted to build.
Yeah, like
it literally said he had store cities, like with storage, just cities for storage, cities for his horses, cities for all of his belongings.
Like I wrote it down, and I knew I was gonna. I should have. I think it was the First Kings. I think it was First Kings 4. In there, they actually talked about like what he went through in a day, like with his kingdom, and I had to look up the unit of measure.
Like 5 tons of grain,
5 tons of flour, 5.5 tons of flour, 11 tons of meal, like immense amounts of cattle. I'm like, this is just crazy. And I assume it's like his whole kingdom. So I assume it's like his whole thing, but still, that's a lot of stuff for like one day. And then even in that same one, it says he's the wisest guy out there. He wrote 3,000 proverbs. I'm like, I got 31 of them. Like who made the decision that like I would love to see some of the other wisdom.
31 chapters. So.
Yes. So
each chapter has a bunch of proverbs, but there's definitely not 3,000.
I know. So I'm just wondering, like, some of them he just threw out. That's a good question. I didn't think of that. Like, I always think of it as the books of Proverbs, or the chapters. But yeah, maybe there is.
Well, and not all of the proverbs in Proverbs are from him. Like, there's a couple of wise guys in there.
But I just think it would be great if there was like a blooper reel of the Proverbs that didn't get in the book. Like maybe some of them were just kind of off the wall Proverbs that nobody really talks about. And he just threw them out there. They're like, no, that one's not going in the book. We're not putting that down. That's ridiculous.
Something that was very interesting, which I have always been a fan of. Actually, before we get into this, let's talk about some weird moments that happened. One weird moment. So Solomon is building his palace and he's building the temple. And he talks to the king of Tyre and he says, hey, you got some great woodworker people. I would love for them to help. And the king of Tyre is like, oh man, gosh, you're such a nice guy. And you're so wise and God has really blessed you. So he sends them some woodworker people. When the job is done, Solomon gives some towns to the king of Tyre, and there's just one small chunk where it talks about it. It says the king of Tyre goes to the towns and is like, these places are horrible. Calls them like the towns of cobblestone or something like that. And I was like, oh, Solomon, what were you thinking?
Well, so I I know exactly where you're talking because I highlighted it, and I think is it Kabul? Is that the name of it? But I think it actually says they're named that till this day. Like not only did the guy say, man, this land is horrible,
Yeah.
but then it kept that name. So it holds on to that label to this day. Like, wow, where do you live? Well, it's not really a great place.
It's a horrible place. I mean, you probably heard about it from back in the day.
You didn't even give it a chance.
Yeah, but I was just like, how wise was it, Solomon, to give your ally the worst towns you could find?
Yeah.
So that was an interesting one. A moment where he actually was wise, although I did think, wow, I would never say this. The two prostitutes that were fighting over a baby, and Solomon's like, bring me a sword. Listen, I will cut the baby in half. You can each take half of the baby. Now, it works out because he figures out who the real mother is, but I was like, I would never just be like, all right, bring me your baby. Well,
yeah, listen,
let's
why
share.
this man? This is going to work.
I mean, you couldn't have said like, look, you take Saturday, I'll take Sunday.
There was no custody agreements. There was no custody agreements and split it up.
That's how they did old school. Old school.
Yeah.
But,
sword to baby. That's all you need in life.
But that was interesting.
Oh yeah, I don't.
There's just some weird details in there.
Well, and I think it was. Is it the Second Chronicles is that where we figured out like how much stuff he used in a day? I think that was where that came in, and I just thought it was funny the numbers that stuck out to me. Like he had 12 governors over the lands, and I'm like, oh, 12. I've heard of that number before.
Yeah,
like that. But then they talked about but what was funny is they talk about how great his setup is, like how he has all these people in charge, how great his organization is. And the number 12 is in there, which is like, oh, that's probably a pretty good number. And then they talk about his riches, and the number 666 is in there, and I'm like, ooh, money and like my brain just like numbers. I'm like, good number.
Really symbolic on that. So the 12 is Jesus. This is our Jesus verse. He has 12 disciples. The 666 is not great.
Not good. So this money is not going to work. But it was just funny how my brain worked that way. I'm like, oh, it's not good that he's got that much money. But then I'm like, ooh, his organizational stuff. Oh, that's good. Oh, 12. That must be a good number. Throw in 7 somewhere. That's always a good number too.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I thought that was kind of a funny thing that stood out to me on both. But
so something that I like is the parallels of wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And they come up a lot. They come up a lot in Proverbs. It comes up in different areas throughout the story of Solomon. So like 1 Kings 4:29 says, God gave Solomon wisdom and very great insight and a breadth of understanding as measureless as the sand on the seashore. And then it goes on later and it talks about like his knowledge, which is he spoke about plant life from the cedar of Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of walls. He also spoke about animals, birds, reptiles, and fish. So basically he had knowledge about like the most bizarre details, really.
I wrote in the note, he's very outdoorsy.
He's very outdoorsy, yeah. But basically his expansive knowledge is so intense. Well, then you get into Proverbs, and it keeps bringing up, Proverbs continually brings up kind of like the three categories of wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. So Proverbs 2, verse 6 says, for the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth come knowledge and understanding. Proverbs 3:19-20, by wisdom the Lord laid the earth's foundations, by understanding he set the heavens in place, by his knowledge the watery depths were divided, and the clouds let drop the dew. So it's just all of these different themes of really these 3 things that make up what is wisdom. And it's very cool. I've always found it very interesting because people, when they think about wisdom, they usually just take wisdom by itself, you know, like, okay, man, I want to be wise. But a part of that is knowledge. like learning things and knowing things. Like Solomon knew the most bizarre facts, and you wouldn't think, oh yeah, I should have knowledge about these bizarre facts, and that will contribute to my wisdom. But it's just it's very interesting where if we want to be wise people, we need to look at wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. What are those?
Yeah, I think that it puts it on us to seek out, and I think that's the thing. Is it's that well-rounded. It's making sure that, yeah, I don't think Solomon needed all of that knowledge of all the plants, but he, even asking for wisdom, him knowing all of those things, those ins and outs, were so powerful. But what I love is, and I think I highlighted this on purpose so it'll stay with me for a very long time, but just Proverbs 1:4, for giving prudence to those who are simple. Just simple. Like, listen, you don't have to be like, I might be the wisest person, I'm writing this, but it goes on. It's like knowledge and discretion to the young. Okay, that sounds better. We're making it for young people, but I'm like, okay, I can be simple and understand this. Like, you're not speaking over my head. Yeah, I can get it. So,
and Proverbs is just filled with a lot of practical steps that you can take. Like, it's nothing. I mean, there are a couple in there where you're like, what? But for the most part, it's just very much like, okay, do this. One-liner. And you can remember that, and you can memorize it, and then use that to kind of guide what your actions are.
Well, and I think in our reading of Solomon, we get a glimpse into his harem of wives, his army of wives, as the case may be. But then Proverbs 5-7 is all about adultery. Like, so what you're saying, just marry him? Like, it was just a weird dynamic. Like, don't adultery on like 5-7. But then right before that, we talk about Solomon. He's just got a list of wives that are happening. Like, it's crazy. It's like, yeah, you can speak about not doing that, but you're just marrying all of them. So of course it's not bad for you.
Yeah, that does bring up, there are some good lines in there. One of them was even talking about how wisdom, gosh, I didn't even write that one down, but it was something along the lines of wisdom can keep you from adultery. And I was like, oh, look at that. Another great thing that wisdom can do.
Man, wisdom just keeps you going.
Win.
Yeah.
Something random that I did notice. So 1 Kings 4:31, it says he was wiser than anyone else, including Ethan, the Ezrahite. And I was like, oh, I recognize that guy. He wrote one of the Psalms.
I know.
You remember talking about Ethan?
Yeah, I just stuck out. And Ethan, yep.
So apparently he was a songwriter and he was a wise person. Not as great as Solomon, but apparently an important dude.
I mean, man, how great. He's like, man, one of my Psalms got in the Bible. This is great. I'm so awesome. And I was like, yeah, but you're not as good as Solomon. Man, he's so much better.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
I thought that was pretty great.
Yeah.
This is another verse, and this one has nothing to do with any of the previous ones, but this is just one that I think about. Proverbs 4:19. But the way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They do not know what makes them stumble. And this actually would relate to, I think, what I would say would be my next step for this week. So it helps to remember that when we look at other people and they're not following Jesus and they're stumbling around, they're making bad choices, whatever they are, I think that it helps us to love others when we kind of internalize, hey, the way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They don't even know why their lives are messed up. They don't get why everything is screwing up. They don't get why they shouldn't do certain things. They just don't understand because they're living in deep darkness. You know, there's no light around them. They can't see the stump that's tripping them up under their feet. And so I think that can help with that. But I think it can also help with people who are newly Christian, and to remind us to be more merciful and to be more patient with people who are newly Christian. And when they mess up or maybe they keep messing up on something, we don't come down on them hard and be like, I cannot believe you just did that. Because they just don't have that full light in their lives yet. And so that's something that I try to remember when I'm looking at people, to kind of internalize and say to myself, hey, this person doesn't have Jesus. I can't hold them to the same standard that I do fellow Christians, or whatever that looks like. So
yeah, and that's where kind of my next step falls, is I think there's that stumbling, but mine was the simple, I think it's Proverbs 122. How long will you who are simple, once again, who love your simple ways? How long will mockers delight in mockery and fools hate knowledge? And that's what you talked about, is like, at what point are you really going to take an honest look at what you're at and just say, you know what, I know that these decisions aren't helping me, or these decisions aren't great. You know what, I might need to make some changes, and I might need to seek out that knowledge, that learning of how I can improve and make my life better. Because I think we're so quick to point out what other people are doing wrong, or how other people should be living a certain way. And it's so easy to do that, but it's hard to say, okay, maybe I'm doing something that I shouldn't, or maybe I'm doing something that I need to change. And right there, just sitting there is like, okay, how long do you want to keep it up? Or do you want to start seeking out that knowledge and that wisdom to change? So that was mine, is to really take that self-evaluation, that look at yourself. And that way you can maybe get a better understanding of what other people are going through, and understanding that fumbling around in the dark and tripping over that same thing, maybe we're so busy looking at other places that we're tripping over the same thing in our own lives, and we're not looking at what we've got going on. So
true.
Our next steps kind of line up, and we didn't even talk about it. Look at that. Telling you what, winning.
I also kind of have a challenge.
Ooh. I'm always up for a challenge.
Instead of a catch-up tip, I have an excuse. That's not right.
So you're giving me an excuse not to read parts of the Bible next week? Is that what you're telling me?
No, not for you.
Oh.
For people who are like, okay, I don't really want to do this read through the Bible in the year thing, for whatever reason. I do say you should do it at one point. You should definitely do it at one point. It is ridiculously good. However, if you're kind of at the point where you're like, okay, but this is not that point, something that we kind of brushed on last week is Proverbs has 31 chapters. That is one chapter per day of the month. So something my dad challenged us to do when we were younger, I was probably only like 10 maybe, is to read a chapter of Proverbs that coincides with the day that it is. So today is the 28th. So today I would read Proverbs 28. Tomorrow I would read Proverbs 29. And you just kind of, go through them. And the amount of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding that I got from consistently reading the proverb of the day was pretty much life-changing for me. So, all
right. So you know what? I love your challenge. And here, I'm going to use my simple ways right now. How many days are in June?
Is there 30?
Is there 30?
I should know.
I thought I should know too, and I don't even have a calendar anywhere near me.
They didn't hire me for my knowledge of months.
Oh,
30. Wow, I'm so good.
We're totally going to get a letter about the fact that we don't know days.
We don't know how many days are in a week. Or in a week.
Seriously, like I don't have a calendar hang on. I did.
Wow, this isn't good for me. Because I also messed up how many weeks are in a year.
Oh, there is 30. So anyway, there is 30 in June. So okay. You're gonna come up one short, so you're gonna have to go into July. But here's what I'm gonna do. Actually, no, because I'll start Sunday, which is the last day of May. So I'm gonna start Sunday night, and I'm gonna read a proverb to the kids every night before bed for the month of June. I'm accepting your challenge. I'm taking it.
Ooh,
Right
nice.
Yep, we are going to read a proverb every night before bed starting Sunday, and that will take us through June. So
Boom.
there we go. I am going to take you up on your challenge, Anna. Don't say I don't shy away from a challenge. I ain't no chump. Here. So
Just out of curiosity, how many Bible plans are you a part of right now?
we don't need to talk about that. I
I don't want to overwhelm you.
I've whittled it down to 2.
Oh,
because
nice.
really I'm just doing the student one where we're reading through the book of Matthew, and then this one. So I've whittled it down to just the 2. I've said no to the other ones because I figure that's getting me the fix that I need to in the Bible. But this isn't my Bible plan. This is for the kids.
Which is awesome.
I am going to give the wisdom of the young, not the simple, the young, as it says in the first one. So I like it. I'm accepting your challenge.
Awesome.
So there we go.
Everybody else accept the same challenge.
Yeah, get on it. Get on it. But,
and it's a good way to get into the Bible if you're not ready to jump onto a year plan. But again, you should do that too.
Man, the Bible, bringing families together.
Yeah, for real.
We'll see. At least I think it's going to bring us together. It might just, who knows?
Tear you apart?
I hope not.
Pray against that. No to that.
I love it.
Okay, so next week we're going to be in Proverbs more. So I guess Eric, you'll be getting it multiple times, which will be nice.
Full learners. It'll be good for me.
Really, just so good. So good. The Proverbs are so good. And do the challenge. Thank you for listening to What Now with Anna and Eric.
Hey, it was great hanging out with you, Anna. Every week, I look forward to it more and more.
Enjoy your quarantine. Get outside.
Hey, got a boat? Why not?
Wipe down your wet boats that has been rained on.
No, you don't want those boats getting wet. You never know.
I mean, that's how Eric feels, though.
Right.
It's legit. We will see you next
Keep
week.
it clean.
I am Anna.
We'll be here. I'm Eric.
Adios.
See ya.